If I may have your attention, please. Thank you all for being here today for the very first master class affiliated with the KBF Kids Day. We want you to listen closely, ask questions, and get ready for something that very few high school students in the entire state get to experience, a master class. We are very lucky to have this program to offer. In fact, the presentation you're about to hear is part of the Pulitzer Prize's Centennial Campfires initiative. It is now my pleasure to welcome to the stage a Pulitzer Prize winner for editorial writing, current Associate Vice President and Professor of Journalism at Wake Forest University, and the editor of Wake Forest Magazine, Maria Henson.
Good morning, and it's so nice to be back in Kentucky. We were what was considered the gatekeepers, the newspapers were, but it's a different time, as you know, and so these days, you are the gatekeeper. You're deciding what news is credible and which ones news sources you think are reliable. For the purposes of today, I want to talk to you about a course I teach at Wake Forest, which is called News Literacy. And news literacy is the ability to use critical thinking skills to judge the reliability and credibility of news reports, whether they come on the internet, on radio, television, print, you name it. It turns out that this concept of news literacy, which was even mentioned 2 days ago on a National Public Radio interview, it's really important in this election, as you can imagine. It's a concept that started at the University of Stony Brook in New York. Howard Schneider had been the editor of Newsday, and now this movement is going great guns all around the world, even to Bhutan. It's mostly in colleges, but it's starting to become available now in high schools. This is really important because we talk about in my class reliable information, and that's information you can make a judgment about, you can pass on responsibly, so you're not just clicking things through on your Twitter feed and putting out their faulty information. So news literacy is about giving you the opportunity to develop these skill sets so that you can be someone who stands out among your peers, who says, you know what, I'm a little skeptical of that information. I'm not going to just send it. I'm going to get to the bottom of who the sources are. And if you do that, you can become the kind of engaged, intelligent person who makes really important decisions about how we govern ourselves. And that's what we say the primary purpose of journalism in this country is to provide citizens the information they need to be free and self-governing. It's really important in our democracy. So the metaphor of which neighborhood you're in, that will help you answer the question. Advertising, raw information, propaganda, entertainment, and yes, journalism. They each have their own metaphorical neighborhood. And just like neighborhoods of a city, their borders aren't always clearly drawn. And there are 3 defining attributes of journalism. It's easier to remember it, or at least I tell my college students, remember it by VIA. Verification, independence, accountability. And if all 3 are not present, you're not in the journalism neighborhood. So when they blur those lines on your piece of paper, these are things to ask yourself. What's the primary objective? Is it to inform you? Is it to entertain you? Is it to sell you on something? Is it to deceive you? If you come up with an answer that's anything other than inform you, then you're not in the journalism neighborhood. So the times we've been living through in these last few months, actually almost more than a year now, I guess, it's really been to the benefit of all of the folks trying to sell us on candidates, on ads, to blur the lines, and sometimes for late night entertainment to blur the lines for us too. But if you come back again to what's the primary purpose, who are the people loyal to, where does the loyalty lie? That will help you. Any questions from the audience? Come on down if you have any.
As a journalist, what how is the First Amendment important to you, and how is freedom of information going to change in the information age?
Well, there's nothing more important for a journalist than the ability to do one's work. And the First Amendment provides that protection, not just for journalists, but for you, freedom of speech, freedom to print. You might have to suffer consequences after you print or broadcast if for some reason you have done that with actual malice, or you have endangered national security in a clear and immediate present danger way. But the Supreme Court, through its rulings and our history over time, has really allowed us to have more and more freedom under the First Amendment to provide that check on our government. And that check is what helps keep us free.
What opportunities are there for aspiring journalists today during the digital age?
During the digital age. Okay, so that's sort of what we were talking about a little earlier. And it's such a good question because any of you who do, and I see really good representation from high school newspapers here, if that's something that you want to pursue, it's probably going to be even a world different from five years from now than it is today. So the digital age means trying to get as much specialization as you can, if possible. Maybe that's around a business question, or maybe it's around data, being able to look at data and make sense of what do the trends show. That's a really important way for new journalists to get hired these days, to understand the power of crowdsourcing, helping stories get told by using social media to invite in new sources. You see a lot of that work coming out of ProPublica.org in New York. Texas Tribune in Austin has just hired in the last few months Amanda Zamora from New York, who understands how to take a subject, maybe it's Agent Orange and what's happened to the veterans, and pull in voices through social media to make those stories even more powerful. So I say you'll have all sorts of ways of being journalists if you keep in mind who you're working for, and by that I mean citizens, and having those really important values at the center of your work. That you're doing it for the good of democracy, that you're doing it to be sure that stories are out there that need to be told. Okay?
What would you like people to get from your writing?
Sometimes it's about, the story they need to know that I think they should know. But mostly what I hope for anybody to get out of the writing is that little sense of connection, that you feel that connection that's a universal human experience, or you feel compassion after you read something, and you feel like, and certainly when I was doing the crusading kind of editorial writing, that you feel like something has to be done, and that something can be done by the public. You all have been such an attentive audience, and you asked me great journalistic questions, hard questions about my opinions about some things, that some of it maybe I haven't sorted out. So thank you for bearing with me, but it has been such a pleasure to have a great group of high school students from Kentucky. And I'll certainly remember this day and how much I enjoyed and feel very privileged to have been with you. So thank you for coming.